Welcome to the Better Than Bitter podcast, episode 31. What's your financial identity? Finding your financial self. Tom Shepard, who is the author of Money Isn't Everything, Everything is Money, and a certified financial planner and investment advisor, has been helping people understand their relationship with money for over 30 years. And as we know, one of the top reasons that people get divorced is because of money, or having a different view on money, or valuing money differently. And he uses a personal assessment tool called Find Your Financial Nature, which he has trademarked. Tom is going to help you discover your genetic predisposition to money. I said it, genetic predisposition. Did you know that we have a genetic predisposition to money? This is the language your mind and body go to when thinking about trading your time, energy, and money to create the relationships with the life that you dream of. So he has an incredible assessment that I will put in the show notes. It's currencycamp.com. But today we're going to get to talk to Tom specifically about who you are. You're going to be able to answer some of these questions. It might be the most important question you'll ever ask yourself, and the most important information that we share with the people in our lives. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Everybody knows one of the top reasons people get divorced is over money. And it's not just about fighting over money, but it's how they value money. It's how they use money in their lives. So how do people find their financial self? Like, how do we determine if we are right for one another? And how can we determine, even moving forward past divorce, like how we're going to utilize this information moving forward to have a healthier relationship?
In one sentence.
Yeah, right. Well, that's all that we're going to cover today. So yeah, we can just kind of chip away at it. So how did this idea around this financial self, how did you even begin to think about it? Why did it come into your being?
So I can give credit to having my first two children be girls, because they came out different, and it wasn't gender. So one of them, really kind of came into the world and had like this energy that was, feeding off of everything around her and wanting to be the center of attention. And then the other one was kind of opposite of that. Even to the point when I was teaching them to ride a bike, one of them made it go straight and the other one just figured out how to not have it fall over. So the fact that they were so different, I was also training like young people to be advisors, to go into somebody's home and teach them about money or ask them about money. And we started having conversations about how people are different. And I said, I've got two little girls at home, they're teaching me that they're different right from the beginning. And so that was kind of the impetus to explore with other advisors how people are different and ask the question, is it innate or is it learned? Is it nature or is it nurture? And I kind of very quickly, because of my kids, came down on the side of nature. And it's actually, I wouldn't say it's made me a pariah, but the approach that we take is very unique. And as much as I talk about it, it's not necessarily being adopted by the masses. And so I'm happy to be on this show to talk about it, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's powerful. And I've used it over and over and over again with clients and in my own life.
So when you talk about it, quote unquote, what is it? What are we talking about here? What is it that is so interesting? And the fact that it's genetic, like what is it?
So when we say money isn't everything, everything is money, we're kind of trying to get people to recognize that the it is the way you trade time and energy to get money so that you can buy the kind of life that you want. The relationship with life uses an exchange of all of these currencies, these things that you value in your life. You value time, you value health. Good health is good energy. Money just happens to be the most visible and material manifestation of how we trade. So by looking at that financial pattern, we can begin to see or uncover or know the way you trade the other things as well that are less visible. So that it is your financial nature. And the way to discover it is really just to our assessment does a really nice job of it, but is to really listen to the words that resonate with you. so that you find yourself attracted to the things that you want. And if we see money as just another form of energy, then it starts to bring us into an understanding that is similar to the 7 chakras or the 7 colors of the rainbow, or there's this magic number 7 that just keeps appearing over and over and over again. And as we dug into this, we kind of categorized and created this little system that we use to help people get to know themselves at this unconscious level, making the unconscious conscious.
Okay, so I think this is super interesting because I think that in some ways when we are younger, there is this idea around opposites attract, right? So I was somebody who was a spender. I loved experiences. I would invest heavily and not with much hesitation if I could go and have an experience that's going to give me pleasure. I didn't really think too much about saving money for the rainy day. And I ended up marrying somebody who was very fiscally conservative, very much of a saver and a planner. And, at that stage in my life, I really needed that person to be like, woo, let's bring it all in here.
Right.
Stop flying by the seat of your pants. Like, you got to think about the future. Over time, I think that breakdown or the discord in the way that we viewed money was one of the reasons why we ended up getting divorced. And it was because of the way we looked at life at the beginning. And then as life got more complex financially, when you bring in children and then you have homes and you have all these other things, we just didn't see eye to eye.
So there's 7 financial natures. And what I love about this system is it uses common language, right? So money is woven into the language in ways that you wouldn't even believe until you start observing it. So how we value the world is one of 7 ways. And then how we're motivated to be in the world is one of 3 ways. So we end up with 21 different types. There's 23 chromosomes, 2 for gender, 21 for type. So there's 21 different types of women. There's 21 different types of men. The 7 natures are spender, earner, saver, investor, lever, giver, and taker. And the one that is your sweet spot, the 2 on either side, tend to not be so sweet for you because that's the room that you live in. So on one side of the investor is the leverage. The other side is the saver. And so you're probably perfectly at home with the concept of earn some money, and you might even be at home with give some money, but it's the 2 on either side of you that kind of create this wall on either side. And so we tend to not want to go through the eye wall of the hurricane. And so life has a tendency to be best for us when somebody meets us in this space or whisks us to a completely different space that's not as in this distortion area for us.
So what is the lever? So some of them have more instinctual descriptions, right? You can probably understand what a saver is and a spender and an investor, but a lever, is that someone who uses money to manipulate others?
So there's a dark side to every one of these.
Mm-hmm.
But if we think about a lever is a system that is built to make things easier. So if I have a fulcrum and a rod and I stick it under something I want to move, it doesn't take a lot of effort to move it. Leverage is like the good debt. So a mortgage, or you need a car to go to work. So you get a car and you want reliable transportation so you can get there reliably and on time. So borrowing some money to get that form of transportation, that's leverage. And we have a subset of the population that wants to think that all borrowed money is evil. But in reality, some debt is a burden and some helps us do things easier or lighter. So if I'm renting a space that's costing me $2,000 and I can buy a space for $1,500, I'm actually using leverage to make something easier. And that's positive and it's good. And it's a big part of how our economy is built, is on this healthy way of borrowing money. But then there's another type that's more associated with debt and spending more than you earn. So So lever is the one I usually get questions about, and it only makes sense. It's actually what I am, the person who created this system that's going to help you have an easier and more successful relationship with money. The first thing you need to know is, how are you doing it, and how have you been doing it? It being trade time and energy to get money so you can have the kind of relationship you want. And you've been doing it since birth.
That's so interesting too, because I think about divorce. And one of the things that is really challenging is that as a divorce success coach, many people who are getting divorced are like, oh my gosh, I can't spend another dollar on another service. I need to focus on getting my lawyer. I need to be focusing on a mediator. If you invest in processing your emotional divorce, if you do the work up front, then you won't be spending all those dollars on legal fees, because your emotional divorce won't be what's dictating your legal process or your legal negotiation. So what I create as well, with the courses that I provide, the support group, the membership I offer, people who believe in that kind of money mindset around looking at it as a lever to make things easier, to potentially be in a safer, better place, spending less money in the future. Obviously, I'm a creator, you're a creator, and we create things to, do good for other people. But it'd be really interesting to evaluate the individuals that do invest in coaching, to go through your system to figure out who are the people most likely to invest in these types of things to make their divorce easier, to reduce the likelihood of long-term trauma, to reduce their legal fees. There's a personality type there. And what I hear you saying is it's genetic.
Yeah.
Genetic predisposition. So you could look at shopping behaviors. You could look at who are the people most likely to invest from a data perspective based on past purchasing behaviors. You can see what they're spending their money on.
One of the things that in my business, the most important thing that you can give somebody when they come in is the sense that you understand them. We talk about seeing somebody, hearing somebody. And so when we start working with somebody, the very first thing we have them do is take this Find Your Financial Nature assessment. It takes 2 minutes to answer these 7 questions. And it takes something from underneath the table. Who are you when it comes to money? And it puts it on the table. And if you're dealing with 2 people, one might be one way and one might be the other way. I had this one couple call me because they were in their house and they were getting ready for the meeting, and they were taking the assessment, and they said, we can't finish it. They said, we can't agree on the answers.
They didn't take it individually. They were
And I
taking
said,
it.
you guys, you got to take it as individuals. You are each wired individually to have a kind of relationship with money that you prefer. We teach this currency camp class, and on the very first day, we have them do the assessment. And we also have them make a list of what they want to get out of the course. So give us 5 things that you want to learn from this course. And then we compare their assessment to their list. So what do investors want to learn more about? Investing. What do spenders want to learn more about? Budgeting. What do savers want to learn more about? How to save more money. And so we all want what we want because of the way we're wired. That's our preference. But to be successful with money, you need to learn how to do all 7. So if you can discover how you are and how somebody else is and put it on the table, now we're talking about energy as something that we can visibly see and interact with, and we can make different decisions when we see what the decisions are, the different choices that we're making. When we can see them, we can choose differently, especially if the situation warrants a different choice.
I think that, all of our listeners here, if they have had a financial breakdown, in their relationship, and that was one of the reasons why they were getting divorced, of course, moving forward, not only are they going to, if they're co-parenting, they need to have an understanding of that's not going to change, right? Because, your value of money or whatever your identity is, it's going to be the same. So what can we do to make sure moving forward in our co-parenting, and we're still dealing with money, we're still dealing with finances, we're still dealing with the kids, like that doesn't go away, but how can we work together more effectively? And then the other part is finding a new relationship and like literally going through the process and having somebody come and do your assessment. We're happy together, but could this work, or how is this going to work so we don't have that same financial breakdown?
So I'll give you a really cool story of this couple who came in. They had two different natures. Here's the example. I had a woman who was age 59, married to a doctor who was 70. And they came to me. I got a phone call on a Monday, and the woman said, "We need to see you. What do you have available?" I said, "Next Tuesday." She said, "You got anything sooner?" I said, "Yeah, this afternoon at 2:00. She's like, "We'll be there." So clearly they were in some kind of a crisis. They had an urgency to this. And they came into the office, and what happened was he went on a business trip to Savannah, Georgia, and he decided to put earnest money down on a house, a Georgia row house. And he came back and he was selling her on this idea that this was a great investment, but also trying to explain to her that this was something he'd wanted his entire life. And so she was like asking questions like, why do you want this thing? So we did the assessment. She's 59, he's 70, he's a doctor. She was mostly a stay-at-home spouse. So immediately I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, there's a stage of life thing going on here. She's wondering, when's he going to retire? And he's wondering, what's my legacy? So they take the assessment. She gets saver. He gets giver. Now, a giver is someone who can have like passions that well up from the inside. And this is what his Georgia row house thing was like this thing he couldn't explain. It was an intuitive sense that he was on the earth to one day own a Georgia row house. And so when the opportunity arose, he's like, "I'm doing it." And he didn't consult her. He just put the money down. The giver, in between the giver and the saver, is lever and investor. And he did not want to borrow any money. And so he was selling her on the idea that this is an investment, but she's a saver. And he was also going to take their savings. So he was going to raid the investments and savings that are dear to her because he didn't want to borrow any money. And so we got them to see that their disagreement was on not whether or not to do it, but we were hired to show them that it would be a perfectly legitimate thing to do given their financial circumstances. But the question was how to do it. And so we showed them that it actually diversified their portfolio. It became an excellent investment, but it was less risky to borrow the money to do it and leave the savings and leave the current diversified investment portfolio intact and not put all your eggs in that one basket. End of the story was we did it. We did it very quickly because they needed an answer because they had to get the earnest money back if they weren't going to do it. And they didn't do it. They bought a smaller one and he borrowed some money. And so, it has a happy ending, but it has a happy ending because they found somebody who could get them to understand each other like really quickly, because they had less than 4 days to ask for the earnest money back.
You might have saved my marriage if, we could have gone through all of your processes to understand, I think it's really important in relationships. And again, everybody listening most likely is on the path of divorce. But again, understanding this, not only from a position of being able to continue to communicate effectively, understanding where the person's coming from. Taking full ownership and responsibility for my own actions. Like I didn't understand my spouse's, I didn't know where it came from. It was completely opposite of my mindset. So I seemed callous, insensitive, seemed that I just didn't listen or hear what he was saying.
The other part to the type, it's not just 7 natures.
Okay.
It's 3 motivations. And so one motivation is to protect. When we start working with somebody, say, are you here to protect what you got, to pursue more, or to manage? And because there's only 3, it's really just a brief conversation that helps us figure out which one of those you are, because you have a preference for that as well. And so the protectors say protect, the pursuers say pursue, and the managers want to have a dialogue about it.
Yeah,
And
gosh,
so,
I think I'm a dangerous person. I think I'm pursuer. I'm an investor. I'm a pursuer, and I don't even manage. Like I'm just always on the pursuit.
So let's say you're a investor pursuer and your currency is relationship. You're willing at any moment to trade time and energy and money to create experiences that will make lasting memories. And then if you're married to somebody who values stability and wants to protect, then you might be married to a manager or protector saver. And you might be rubbing against each other. In the beginning, rubbing against each other is exciting. After a while, too much rubbing against each other makes you raw and exposes the differences between you so that the thing you loved becomes the thing that annoys you. And so by understanding yourself at this level and understanding your significant other at this level, you can begin to accept. And you get to a certain point where you're ready to divorce. And it's healthy if the two of you can accept that our differences truly are irreconcilable. And it's best if we go our separate ways. But, then you end up in another relationship. Where you go, there you are.
Are there some patterns that you see of individuals that work well together? Or I'm assuming that investor pursuer with an investor pursuer, like that could be either like catastrophic, like there's got to be some sort of good balance there.
When you take two people who resonate at the same frequency, you might create something that has very, very destructive force, or it might have very, very creative force. I don't think there's pairings that are necessarily inherently bad, but if you don't know what they are, there are some that work better together in an unconscious state, right? So if you're not conscious of it, if it's unconscious, like to have a saver and a spender, as long as they are working it out, that might be a good mix. So one person is saving the money and the other is spending the money. The first question on the assessment is, where do you go to save? Do you go to a bank or do you go to Walmart? And so one person might be saving the money from being spent in a way that doesn't please the couple, and the other is saving some money in a way that protects the couple so that the money they earn is both building wealth, meeting their needs and wants in a way that is healthy. You can find other pairings that work even when it's unconscious, but if it's not working and you can make it conscious, then you can sort of see how it can work. Because unconsciously, let's say there's 7 things that need to get done and you like to spend money on investing in creating memories. Okay, so that's you. There's still 6 other things that need to get done. And if the other person's doing the other 6, you can see it's not an equal balance in the relationship. And sometimes that's where the problem arises. It's not in how are you different. It's in the boundaries you never discussed. So it's this person taking care of everything and this person only taking care of the one thing that brings them comfort or joy or ease or passion or feelings of goodwill or satisfaction. Because that's ultimately, the pursuit of happiness is done different ways by people who are wired in different ways.
I think that there's also something to be said for the interpretation of action. So I'll give you an example. So we redid our house 16 years ago. About 6 years ago, the cabinets started to pan. I look at the house as an investment. You need to take care of your investments. At some point, those cabinets are going to need to be refaced, whether it's we get to enjoy them today or we have to redo it before we end up selling it. It has to get done at some point. And it caused a ton of tension between us. He's just like, I don't understand why this needs to be done. And I'm like, well, because our cabinets are falling apart. We have to take care of our house, just like you take care of your car, you bring it to get service. Like we need to service our house, like things are falling apart. So we had the person come in, they looked at the cabinets. I thought we were on the same page, but I wasn't definitive about like, can we move forward? Yeah. Because we were both there. I just made the commitment to do the cabinets. It caused a lot of problems. At that moment, it wasn't what he wanted to spend the money on. He has a different nature. He wanted to be able to save that money, put it in a kid's college fund, et cetera, et cetera. He had other plans for that money other than redoing the cabinets. And so again, my interpretation of my intent was to protect an investment that we had already invested in, which was our house. And we just weren't aligned on that.
Right.
And that's just like one example, but again, it's the interpretation of it. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that common?
Yes, because not only do we pursue happiness differently based on these seven natures, so I'll run through those real quick. People who are takers, they pursue happiness through excitement. Spenders through fun. Things need to be fun. Earners, life needs to be satisfying. The fun can't just be superfluous. It needs to have a purpose. Savers, it's comfort. Investors, it's joy. Levers, it's ease. And givers, passion. There's four currencies. So you might value relationship over money, but you also pursue love a little bit differently based on how you're wired. So some people are about aesthetics. Some people are about friendship. Some people are about doing what brings them passion. And so when we sort of are able to identify how we are, and we look at our favorite currency, the stage of life we're in. But it bothers me to no end that young people are being told, you got to save for retirement. It's like, dude, let them be that age, where you get to learn so that later on they'll actually understand that, yeah, retirement's important, but it wasn't so important that you had to put your life on hold for that. So life stage, the state within a stage, you don't do the same thing with a 4-year-old that you do at a 12-year-old, and they're all in the allowance stage. They're allowed to do stuff because the parents are allowing them to do it. And so this idea that here's a pattern that you can know that describes who you are and how you approach all of these different elements of what it's like to live. Susan.
In relationships, you can't control anybody else. You can only control your own actions or reactions to those individuals. But there is an extreme amount of, power struggles in relationships. It takes taking accountability or responsibility of your own actions versus pointing fingers back towards others. Because once you do that, you give them full power over your feelings, right? So if you're saying like, you made me do this or you make me feel that way, well, then you're giving up your power to that other person. So in what you're saying is we can come from two different natures of the way that we view money, and that if you come to the table with an open mind to try to understand the other individual's perspective and ask them what it might feel like, or, the senses by which they are feeling, that's an extraordinarily large ask. And
there's a sign on in today's world, a lot of the jobs are now jobs that adults do that kids used to do. Like you go around and you see who's mowing the lawns, and it's full grown adults making $100,000 a year because they've figured out how to leverage riding mowers and time, and everybody's so busy, and the kids are so busy doing sports that none of them have time to do work. And so our entire system kind of gets a little bit distorted because we aren't embracing, like my son at a certain age was chasing me around the yard when I was on the riding mower. And I'm like, do you want to ride this thing? And so I put him on it, and he wasn't heavy enough to keep the kill switch from turning it off. So I had to strap a 50-pound weight on the back of the seat in order to let him do it. But that's when he wanted, he's like, it's time, Dad. I can do this. I want to do this. And so when we distort a natural way of doing things, we're disrupting an order. And we can disrupt the order if we understand we're doing it. But if we just unconsciously disrupt the order, then we're left with something that's distorted, and we don't know then how to tune it. And so I'm not saying to anybody that one spouse can be all of that to another spouse. This is me saying it takes a village, or it takes a community, it takes a nation, it takes a world. It's an incredibly wonderful place that we live in, and you can't get it all from one other person. We do need to support each other in this bigger way. That's how we move up. It's how we grow. It's how we evolve.
So this has been super fascinating, and we've given so much information. And so I usually am the one who does like the 3 top tips for the day, but because you've written a book and these bullet points are ones that, are very prominent in the way that you speak about the book and it speak about your currency camp and speak about your evaluation. What are the 3 top bullet point tips that you could give to our audience on what they should have taken away from today?
So number 1, you could find your financial nature by going to currencycamp.com, click on the orange box in the middle of the page. It'll immediately take you to a survey. There's 7 questions. There's a little blue arrow down in the right. Click it, answer something, answer another one. And pretty soon you're going to know something about yourself. Number 2, try to figure out whether you are a pursuer, a protector, or a manager. When you're going through the assessment, if you find yourself overthinking every question, you're a manager. And you are allowed to take the assessment 2, 3, 4 times. However many times you need to take the assessment, take the assessment. That's your type: protector, manager, or pursuer combined with your nature. So there's 21 different types. Have your significant other, have your children, have your coworker, have your boss do it as well, because then you're going to begin to understand how the energy between you is manifesting based on these very hardwired ways of being. So don't try to do it alone and then use it to manipulate other people. Do it to communicate with other people and commune with other people and be with other people. So those are the 3. Take the assessment, figure out what your motivation is, and then see if you can find somebody to do it with so that you can then have a discussion about it. Those are my 3 tips.
Those are great, Tom. And I hope that everybody goes ahead and does that assessment. Would love people's feedback. You can also come to the Better Than Bitter Facebook group. I'm going to post the assessment on the Facebook group and you can take it right there. I'll put the link in there and would love everybody's feedback. We can get people's comments. It would be really great to see what people's thoughts are around this. And again, thinking about it and from a position of divorce and thinking about it, the irreconcilable breakdown of your marriage. If you believe that financial nature had something to do with it, it'd be great to just have a conversation about that. And the second piece of it is we all want to move forward in terms of our lives post-divorce, and many want to have healthy relationships moving forward. So what can we learn from what Tom and his team are providing about how to build out a healthier relationship? And knowing your nature and your type are 2 ways of beginning that conversation, with somebody that you're dating to figure out where you potentially might see some breakdowns. And then you, instead of just throwing your hands up, you kind of work through what those differences are and how you might be able to, as Tom said, open your mind to be able to put yourself in the position of somebody else, to understanding how they might be seeing the world and allowing for them to see how you might be seeing the world, and recognize that there might have to be some empathy that's involved there, as well as compassion. Because again, I go back to the fact that intent on things that we do in our lives as it relates to money has to be communicated. Intent has to be communicated. And again, it's going to be aligned with what Tom said in terms of our nature, but it's really important to understand the background of the reasons why you are the way you are. I know very clearly why I am the way I am. And we can talk about that in another episode. But Tom, thank you so much again. All of this is going to be in the show notes. So please make sure that you can find Tom. The link to the assessment will also be in the show notes, and ways for you to connect with him. And Tom, this is our first of 3. So Tom is going to come on and we're going to do a series of 3 different podcasts. So get excited about learning more deeply about Currency Camp and money equaling happiness, ? In the next episode. So thanks again for joining Better Than Bitter.